just to give all of you a little head start, it's a pleasure to have everyone here. We have two special guest stars after myself. Tenemos dos otros huéspedes después de mi presentación. Natalie Perez will present on high interest technology tools. Natalie Perez presentará en estas herramientas de la tecnología. And finally, Ruben Caputo will talk about esports as a motivation tool online. Ruben Caputo hablará sobre los deportes electrónicos y motivación para todos estos alumnos.
Bien, dándoles la más cordial bienvenida a nombre de Consultores en Educación Internacional y Edu4U, entidad especializada en acompañamiento docente en los Estados Unidos de América. También queremos agradecer a nuestros auspiciadores, CIEWeb, la empresa de gestión de sistemas escolares más exitosa en el medio peruano, y también a Librería Peruano-Británica. Librería Peruano-Británica que distribuye libros y materiales de inglés a nivel nacional. Y a nombre de PAP Training, que es el programa de aprendizaje virtual que ha venido siendo desarrollado por expertos de la Universidad del Estado de California, expertos de Edu4U Learning, y en el Perú a través de consultores en educación internacional. Dándoles nuevamente la bienvenida y el agradecimiento, quisiéramos dar algunas reglas para este seminario. Las reglas, en primer lugar, son mantener apagados los micrófonos, a no ser que el presentador permita la participación activa oral. Se puede usar el chat para que ustedes puedan participar haciendo preguntas que serán absueltas por nuestros presentadores. Y finalmente, decirles que esta serie de webinars que estamos ofreciendo intenta buscar soluciones para el aprendizaje de los estudiantes. La pandemia del COVID-19 nos ha dado a nosotros, profesores y educadores y personas que estamos comprometidas con la educación, nos ha dado muchas dificultades cuyas respuestas recién se están encontrando. Estas respuestas y soluciones se han dado en todo el mundo. En todo el mundo, ¿por qué? Porque ningún profesor había sido formado en la universidad en educación a distancia. Algunos, obviamente, de nosotros teníamos mayores facilidades tecnológicas, otros no tanto. Otros hemos tenido que aprender en el camino, en fracasos, en errores, sabiendo pues que la educación a distancia es totalmente diferente a la educación presencial. Sin embargo, creo que nosotros como profesores estamos buscando y encontrando maneras de lograr que nuestros alumnos aprendan de manera efectiva. El día de hoy tenemos la presencia, en primer lugar, del doctor Steven Brownson. Steven ha estado trabajando para la Universidad del Estado de California durante muchos años y ha entrenado a miles de docentes en lo que es educación a distancia. Steven Brownson es PhD en educación y tiene más de 30 años de experiencia en educación universitaria y también en educación escolar. Él nos hablará el día de hoy de la efectividad de lo que se llaman los breakout rooms. Probablemente muchos de ustedes ya han trabajado con breakout rooms, que significa dividir a los alumnos en salas individuales donde ellos pueden discutir, intercambiar opiniones, llegar a conclusiones y practicar la interactividad que es tan importante en la educación a distancia. Vamos a dejar entonces con ustedes y recibirle, como siempre, con mucha calidez al doctor Steven Brownson, que nos está hablando de Breakout Rooms. La sesión va a ser llevada totalmente en inglés, pero con una traducción que también Steven Brownson, porque él es bilingüe, la va a realizar para aquellos que así lo requieran. Muchas gracias entonces y adelante, Steven. Welcome, Steven. Now you're ready to start your talk. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Bienvenidos. Vamos a hablar cómo usar estos breakout rooms en un método mejor. Me llamo Dr. Brownson. Este es mi correo electrónico, stevenbrownson51 @gmail.com. Y mi número celular. Thank you. So, tengo esta preguntas para ti. I have two questions for you. So basically, why are both small and whole group instruction critical for online learning? And how might interactivity potentially increase in small groups online? En español, ¿por qué es necesario para tener grupos pequeños y el grupo entero de la clase para instrucción de aprendizaje virtual? Y por qué la interactividad tiene la potencial para aumentar participación en grupos pequeños en el mundo virtual. Durante nuestro seminario, ustedes pueden hacer comentarios, hacer cualquier pregunta, pida para clarificación y estoy aquí para ayudar a todos de los profesores y alumnos. Ok, estos son tres recursos que ustedes pueden usar. So these are three great resources for using breakout rooms with Zoom, breakout rooms, and pre-assigning breakout rooms. But I have a question for you, and you're welcome to answer it. My group with EDU4U and IEC will be looking at the chat bar and helping out. So please put your ideas, or you can use the microphones. My question is this: what is the research behind small group or breakout rooms online? Esos grupos pequeños pueden ser sincrónico y asincrónico también. And the breakout rooms themselves are possibilities. Estos grupos pequeños o salones de breakout. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you currently only use whole class instruction online? ¿Cuántos de ustedes solamente usan el grupo entero por su instrucción virtual? So you can put that in the chat room if you want. Escriba en el chat. And let's see. While we're looking at that, we're going to look at how small group instruction online works. So online instruction can both be live, synchronous, and also asynchronous. So students can work potentially in online environments with or without the teacher, depending on the age. Ellos pueden trabajar sin o con la profesor o el profesor sincrónico, but there's options for asynchronous with small groups. And the idea is that if you cluster or target small groups in the breakout rooms, you can have things like project-based learning with asynchronous and synchronous options as well. And the research itself, there are others, but there's Bandura, and Bandura has social learning. Students are social beings. Think of how many of you really enjoy learning online, okay? How would you like it if it was only the whole group, right? So you can use the emoticons if it's thumbs up, if you prefer whole group, or you can put yes or no in the chat box as well. But the whole idea is that Bandura proposed that students thrive, especially second language learners, when they have opportunities to interact online with other students socially. Why? They can practice the language, really important for the key terms, and it's called spiraling. They need repetition in different ways to lock in the sound system, the meaning, the context, as well as the skills that they're learning, let's say summarizing, and the concept. So Bandura habló sobre este aprendizaje social, especialmente en el mundo virtual, con vocabulario, conceptos y aptitudes en el progreso de aprendizar en inglés. So the whole idea is this one. I don't know if you've noticed, but even with my college students, when they stay online for too long, 10, 12 weeks, the cameras start to go off and the sound disappears. They stop participating. So the idea is not only do the social learning, but Freire's community-based teaching. Este es Freire en esta enseñanza de la comunidad y cómo mejorar sus vidas en estos locales o vecinidades. So the idea is, how can you do some sort of project or project-based learning? And that can work online because the memory works better if you go into small groups online or on site and you're doing the social learning and it's real life, el mundo real. They thrive on that. Students want to come to class every day. You love to do that. That's how I've been teaching 25 years for kinder through 12th and 30 years for university students. I've trained 15,000 teachers. Entrené 15,000 o más profesores. Then linked to all that, you have Slavin and Kagan. It's called collaborative learning. And that links to the cooperative abilities of Bandura with social learning. So you form students into groups. My advice, 2 students, maybe 3. For older students, don't go over 4. Mi recomendación es para empezar con 2 alumnos en grupos pequeños y poco a poco 3 para la primaria, 4 para el colegio, no más. Why? Because they get disruptive. So what Slavin and Kagan said is you can target, especially the English instruction. Pueden tener unas oportunidades para poner estrategias y actitudes específicas in grupos pequeños. So let's say I have different levels of intermediate learning. It definitely works. If I'm doing it in a whole group, even with a Socratic seminar, it gets a little boring. Then you also have Dewey. Dewey talked about hands-on learning, real life, project-based learning. So, Señor Dewey habló sobre proyectos del grupo, proyectos del mundo real y proyectos con educación cooperativa. So his idea was, if you go out in the real world, students thrive, they can remember. It's in their schema or way of learning. And then finally, the whole idea behind the small groups and breakouts, and I've done this again, 25 years, both on-site, online, and in hybrid modes, is it promotes mastery at high levels with the key language, the skills, and also the terms. So my question for you now, and all of you can answer this if you want as we go through, put your questions in the chat room and I'll be glad to help out. How can you develop a personalized and targeted learning environment in a breakout room? ¿Cómo pueden desarrollar un ambiente que está personalizado y específica en estos grupos pequeños? So one of the big problems with small groups is if you give them the same thing and you're not targeting it to their needs, it can be a problem. But even worse, whole groups. Because if you only do a whole group, eventually, no matter how exciting you are, with virtual learning, it can be lower motivation, less socialization. So you find out that the participation goes down. Students don't turn on their cameras anymore. They're not listening. So the whole idea is that you want to focus on the ability to not just do whole group instruction, but think of doing asynchronous and synchronous as well as small group, because learning just doesn't occur when you're with the teacher. So esa idea es con el grupo entero, grupo total de la clase. Pueden subir en la motivación, tener menos opciones para socializar y ellos no están engañando en el grupo entero. Y hay opciones con sincrónico y asincrónico que pueden tener una mejor situación. Because you want to leave happy as an English teacher. So what is the solution? Have not only in-class synchronous feeling, but you're building a community with the small groups. And you can do that offline in an asynchronous group. Esta idea es para prometer en la clase sincrónica un sentido de la comunidad con grupos pequeños, y también es importante para tener interactividad en 3 métodos: alumno, alumno, profesor, profesora, alumno, y también con este sujeto y alumno. So the whole idea is you want to have student to student, student to instructor, and student to content. Get that interactivity. And the way I do it with small groups is I just don't put them into the small groups. Let's say I have 5 small groups. I'll go in, make sure everyone is on task, then spend extra time with certain groups. And then you go and do a quick check that everyone else is on task, and they learn that it's necessary to finish all responsibilities. So con esta oportunidad, ustedes pueden tener más interactividad y menos problemas con que estos alumnos están aburridos. Okay, so the next one, you're allowing for an in-depth study of the students for the vocabulary. It's really good because you have the opportunity to target learning, special words, special skills, and concepts in English. Perfect. And then it's called deep structured learning. Estructura más con más énfasis de aprendizaje. It's really important that you go below for pensamiento crítica, critical thinking, para resolver problemas, for problem solving. And also it gives you multiple options for teaching. You can have project-based learning. You can have some hands-on learning. You can have the regular types of learning that you might have in a workbook. But the whole idea is that it's not just one size fits all. And this is the good part. Students have responsibility and accountability. So estos alumnos tienen la responsabilidad y contabilidad. So they can't just tell their parents the teacher didn't do his or her job. But the whole idea is that there's sort of an opportunity where students are responsible. So how do we get here? How do we utilize these breakout rooms? ¿Cómo pueden utilizar estos salones de breakout? Okay, number 1, make sure that you have plenty of academic language. Not just the easy words, maybe pick 2 to 4 words that they work on. Also, have the 3 levels of interactivity. You need to interact with them. Es necesario para tener interacciones, alumno, hasta la profesora, el profesor. So make sure you're using that academic language with them and you have specific roles. I always do that online where I try and engage everyone and I have student to student instruction. So it's not just when I'm in the room. They have to be able to do it in small groups, online, offline, sincrónico, asincrónico. And I really want them to master the content. That's one thing that's going on right now. Many students are falling behind in virtual environments. Muchos alumnos en estos ambientes virtuales no están manteniendo sus aptitudes, conceptos y el vocabulario en inglés y español también. And not only that, but you can have different types of groupings. Same level, homogeneous, different level, heterogeneous. So pueden tener estos grupos del mismo aptitudes y diferentes aptitudes. And there's also options. Don't just assume that learning is just when you're there. Learning can be 24/7 and it can be synchronous or asynchronous, sincrónico or asincrónico, and give them an option where you start the process in the whole class, then small group, and they do it either on their own or in pairs. So pueden introducir sus conceptos en inglés en un grupo total, usan grupos pequeños para chequear y empezar el proyecto, use small groups to check. Then, independently, they can do it off-site. And the whole idea is if you want to get your students coming every day, they come. Why do they come to school on-site? Friends, amistad. So, pueden tener un sentido de la comunidad. You're a family. Make it positive. Listen to the students. And also, what I've noticed is when I use small groups, hay mejor niveles de atención, tiempo de engañar con alumnos y profesores y más motivación. So they really want to be there. That's the whole idea. So now your question is, Dr. Brownson, how do we get there? What are the steps? How can I even do this? ¿Cómo pueden hacerlo? ¿Cuáles son los pasos para empezar este proyecto? Well, first, you got to have a goal, a purpose. So that means, why do you want to do the online learning? It's not just to do a small group. There has to be a reason. Are they reinforcing the goal? Es para reforzar. Are you extending the goal? Para extender. Are you having a project? Es para un proyecto. So, ¿cuál es la meta? Paso dos. What's your social matrix? You got to know your students. Social, cultural, emotional, academic, their family, their interests. Necesitan entender estas aptitudes sociales y todo de la información de estos alumnos. So you got to know what is student-centered. That's critical. You got to think like a student. And paso tres, with that learning goal, you have an assessment. That means hay un método para evaluar si ellos han aprendido el vocabulario, concepto, aptitud or aptitudes. So did they master the vocabulary in English? Oh, let's see what we got over here. Oh, buenas noches, Giseli. Si ustedes tienen cualquier preguntas, pongan en el chat cualquier clarification, whatever you need. I'm here for you. So, step 4, paso 4. What's the time? How much time do you need? Recommendation. Don't use the breakout rooms for more than 2 to 5 minutes in the beginning. Solamente usan estos salones de breakout room por 2 o 5 minutos para empezar. Why? They will play at any age. Give them responsibility step by step. I would, if you're going to have a longer assignment, I would have 10 minutes. Stop, go back to the main room, put them back in the breakout rooms. Once they get a little bit older, or en el colegio, pueden tener 15, 20 minutos, pero la idea es que poco a poco están subiendo el tiempo en esos breakout rooms. And if you split them up, it's also better. You can do it. Then you determine the activity or the assignment. Step 5. ¿Cuál es la actividad? ¿Cuál es la asignatura? ¿Cómo pueden hacerlo? So what you're doing is you have an activity. Example, let's say I'm doing English for food, and it's how to order in a restaurant, and I have a reader's theater or a dialogue. Oh, gracias. And so step 6, you're going to add the teaching strategies. ¿Cuáles son las strategies for teaching? Forget it. We're not going to do it right now. And step 7, implement the small group lesson. Yes, I know. I have a... Thank you. Muchas gracias. Then I implement the small group lesson. Para implementar esta lección del grupo pequeño. Now, this is really important. Step 8. You have to understand, is it working in the small group or not? ¿Cuál es para analizar el impacto? So you got to look at the impact. observing, asking questions. Is it working? And then reflect on the next steps. Para pensar sobre los próximos pasos. Did it work? Great, fantastic. Move forward. Next part. Did it not work completely? It was a failure. Rethink what went wrong and what was right, or make small changes. Now, when you're doing the lessons, there's different ways. How do you conduct these lessons? How do you get these activities in? Because see, this is the most problematic time. Teachers get frustrated. Hay una frustración con profesores. You wanted the students to do something, but they didn't do what you wanted to do. But you have to be very precise. I want you to do one task. That's it. Good. Now that we have the one task, next task. Don't give them more than two things to do. Solamente tienen uno o dos cosas para hacer. And if you can't explain it in 1 minute or less of what they need to do, it won't work. And it has to be in writing and in verbal form. Necesitan tener sus instrucciones escrito y verbales. So what do you have to do? You set the times, right? Just like what we talked about. Okay, everyone, you have 5 minutes. This is your task. Put it in the chat room. Give it to them beforehand. Give them a Google Doc. Make it very precise. So primero es el tiempo. Again, in the beginning, 2 to 5 minutes. Then you teach a lesson, either before, in the whole group, or in the small group. So pueden tener una lección en el grupo total entero, o una lección en el grupo total entero y más instrucción en el grupo pequeño. So you could have a homogeneous group or a heterogeneous group. Oh, you're welcome, Jean-Pierre. Gracias. So what do you have to do? You have to reinforce the whole group instruction. It's para reforzar la instrucción del grupo total. So you've already done a great job teaching English, whatever you're teaching, right? And then you've got to have some follow-up activities to your whole group instruction in the small group. What does that mean? Actividades que son interesantes para estos alumnos. So if you start out with, okay, I'm going to have you do this exciting worksheet, they're not going to do it. You have to have those small groups, something fun and interesting. Necesitan tener diversiones y opciones interesantes y opciones. Ustedes pueden hacer número 1 o número 2. So you can do option 1 or option 2. And if they want to do something different, as long as it meets the learning goal, it doesn't make a difference. So what you're doing is you're testing the knowledge with the assignment. I'm a very strict teacher myself. I had tests every week. Pruebas de vocabulario, gramática, la lectura, la escritura, en español y en inglés. I drilled them like a drill sergeant. But the idea is they need to do some work offline. Asincrónico también, en grupos pequeños. So they need to do offline work in pairs, small groups, and also independently. But I also make it exciting by project-based learning. So what you can do is, even if it's a workbook, make it sound fun and exciting. We're going to do this puzzle, right? Here's part 1 of the puzzle. Don't say this is our workbook page. Then they don't want to do it. It's like food. Think of it. How many of you would want to eat just pan dulce, right? Maybe not. You want something different. Or arroz con pollo, chicken with rice. No, you want pollo saltado, something different, right? So do the same thing with the students. It's all marketing. How can you make it interesting? So you have project-based learning with different things that they can do. And that's offline and online. It doesn't have to just be in that small group. But this is what I do. Se llama WebQuest o excursiones virtuales, virtual field trips. So WebQuest and virtual field trips, I do internet-based research projects. Let's see what we got. Oh, see. Oh, sure. Hold on. Let's see. I will give this to you. Un momentito. y ustedes tendrán este documento. Es muy importante. Oops. Hold on, un minuto, por favor. Gracias. Oh, that's why. Okay. Perdón. Once you get too many files, it gets to be interesting. Here you go. So, ustedes tienen el archivo también. And what you want to do is have the presentations as well. I have Natalie Perez, she'll be presenting soon, with multimedia. So I use things like Nearpod. I also suggest Pear Deck, really important, because with Pear Deck, P-E-A-R-D-E-C-K, you can see what they're doing in real time. You can have questions and it's interactive. You can put your PowerPoints in Nearpod. You can now put them in Powtoon, P-O-W-T-O-O-N. Here, I'll add that to the chat here. Okay, so, oh, I only gave, good grief. Perdón, hold on one minute. I only gave it, there we go. Now everyone has that. So we have Powtoon, we have Pear Deck, there's Seesaw. The whole idea is you can use these multimedia or even YouTubes. I use short videos with YouTubes, and there's something called Flocabulario, also Flocabulary. It's got a beat, it's short, 1 to 3 minutes. And then also look at options for your classroom instruction. What can you do to make your instruction interesting and engaging? So, what are the needs for a virtual or small group instruction? You're welcome, Carolina. And all of you can email me afterwards. I've still been waiting for emails from the first seminar, from the Socratic seminar. But the whole idea is you want to have your learning F cubed, fun, fast, and flexible. And I'm putting that into the chat. Con diversiones, un buen secuencia de tiempo, not too fast, not too slow, y flexible. So it's got to be flexible. If they're not learning about what you want in English, don't do what they don't need. So basically, once you get up to the virtual room, it can be 15 to 20 minutes for middle and high school students, 5 to 10 minutes to begin for primary. 5 hasta al 10 minutos para la primaria, 15 hasta el 20 minutos para el colegio. And so you do the breakout room, right? So what do you need? A very focused learning goal, very brief. Una meta muy breve. What else do you need? Formative assessment, right? So why? Because I need to know how they did. So the next day, I can adjust the lesson. Esta es una evaluación formativa. And you can have it formal, informal, formal or informal. Usually have something at the end, like an exit ticket, un ticket de la salida. And there's great things. That's where you can do whole group, small group, and then a game at the end. Kahoot, quizzes, soccer tip. So why? Because we all want to be winners. So what you're trying to do is convince students, and there's many other games as well. I'm just going to put a few of them in here. You want learning to be exciting. Why? Because they're going to remember it better in English. I use games, virtual field trips, web quests, and then I target instruction. How do I get to know that? Funds of knowledge of what the students can do and what they need. And then, so I link my learning goal with the assessment, and in between, I have the Socratic approach. I ask questions to the students. They can't just sit there and say, I don't know. Yo no sé. They have to participate, and I find ways that I motivate them student-centered. What else do I do? Example, I might have, bueno, okay. ¿Qué tipos de estrategias pueden aplicar para estas aptitudes de la lectura? I'll type it in here right now. Number 1, reciprocal teaching. What does that mean? I do several things. I have students predict What do you think is going to happen? If it's beginning English with a visual, then if it's not, if it's a higher level, I want them to do different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Then what do? I have them read, and it can be silent or out loud. Then what do I have? I ask different types of questions. Who, what, when, where, and I have them, I ask, but then as I go through the lessons, I transfer the responsibility for the students, and I have them ask questions. Then they have to summarize and clarify. That's called reciprocal teaching. There's something else. It's called GIST, generating instructional schemata in text, and I'm typing this in the chat box. How does that work? What I do is this. I'll have a paragraph about science, history. Es un párrafo más difícil, right? I have the students read it. They find two important, actually, they tell me in 5 to 10 words what that paragraph was about, using some of the key words within the paragraph, but in their own schema or way of learning. We go to paragraph number 2. What do they have to do? They have to read paragraph 2 and put together paragraphs 1 and 2 in 10 words or less, max 12. The same with paragraph number 3. Then they have to write a summary sentence at the end. That's giving the gist or the main idea, or a gist. And then my last one, which I said, is the main idea. So actually, there's one more that I'll tell you. With the main idea, I have them look at an expository paragraph, una cosa de información, un párrafo de información o sección, okay, cualquier cosa. So it's some informational writing. And what they do is they look at the paragraph, they find 2 key nouns and 1 key verb. I have them put it together in a summary sentence. So they write down the sentence. Then you follow the same process for the entire passage. Read paragraph 2, same thing. Find 2 key nouns, 1 key verb. You put that together, you have supporting details. Then at the top, they write a topic sentence. I learned 3 things about the water cycle. The last thing I wanted to tell you is something called text-wise. Many students have difficulty with a textbook, so I teach them the organization and structure of a textbook. How? In the English textbooks in the US, blue is a major section, red, subheading. So I teach them using the gist or the main idea skills, or I can even use reciprocal teaching. What is in there? So we'll look at it and we'll break it apart like a jigsaw puzzle, como una rompecabezas, sección a sección. So we break it like a jigsaw puzzle, section by section, and I have them form an outline, a Cornell outline. There's different types of note taking, and I teach them how to take notes with an English textbook. This is more a 4th grade and up. For the younger ones, it's not a good skill, maybe later on. So I hope that helps. Did I answer your question, I hope, about the different skills? And then you want to include information again for this small group breakdown on multimedia or teacher support, right? And so I might have the students like write 3 or more sentences describing, I'll do that, describing the activity, and I include info. So keep asking these questions. They're really good, what you're proposing to me right now. And how do you plan for these groups, right? So I would work with a team rather than just working alone. Está mejor para trabajar con un equipo. So what you want to do is you want to explain the learning goals and the assessment criteria clearly for these small groups. It's vital. So necesitan explicar sus metas y criteria de la evaluación, right? And then this is the key thing. I've got to model or describe the activity. You can't just put them into a breakout room, especially if they're younger, and say, figure it out. It won't happen and nothing will get done. But you do need to check on them. Necesitan modelar o tener descripciones de la actividad o lección en grupos pequeños. Now we're almost done. So what I want is any comments that you have, comentarios. And what I did today is I combined the Socratic approach and the small group learning at the same time. Okay, sounds good, Werner. And finally, my next steps for you, I encourage you to implement the small groups, because after 5 to 10 weeks of online learning, I don't know how many of you, if you want to answer this, yes or no, have noticed that your students are either not coming to class, don't turn on the cameras, or are not participating as much as they did 5 weeks earlier. And you want to think about that, and also have routines for the small groups and whole groups and how to get back. Know how to use the technology. Necesitan tener rutinas. You need to have specific lessons that are, at least there has to be some whole group so that they know what to do before you put them into the small group. And with your teaching approaches, what you want to consider, and it's vital, I want you to think about how you can do this and make it interesting. Oh, here we go. Necesitamos algún tipo especial de computadora para que funcione bien en esta herramienta. No, pueden usar cualquier computadora. Solamente si tiene 3 o menos años de la computadora y pueden funcionar con grupos pequeños, herramientas del internet, herramientas integrados. So if you have a computer that's about 3 years or less, it'll work fine. And even the older computers, as long as you try not to use too much video, it will work. ¿Cuál otras preguntas tienen ustedes? What other questions do you have, needs? I'm glad to answer your questions. And you can use the microphone, pueden usar el micrófono, o pueden escribir en el chat room. De nada, Carla. And quiero decir gracias también para su tiempo. Y tenemos Natalie Pérez con herramientas de la tecnología también. Natalie is coming up next, so please don't go anywhere. How much time do you recommend to use for feedback in the small group? It depends on the group. I would have a minimum of 1 to 2 minutes. So, esta pregunta en español, ¿cuánto tiempo para recomendar, para usar, de hacer comentarios a estos alumnos en grupos pequeños? I would strongly suggest 1 to 2 minutes, no more. And if you're going to have anything else, whole group, or what you want to do is possibly reteach or write it out. ¿Podría repetir los programas? Oh, sure. Sí, por supuesto. And Natalie's coming up next. So she's got some excellent ideas. Nearpod, Pear Deck. There's also, let's see, tip of my tongue. I want to find things that are reasonable. Seesaw, these are all free. Flipgrid, Vocaroo is a podcast. And let's see, what else can we have? Oh, here we go. Powtoon. There's Prezis, which are better than PowerPoints. And I also recommend Google products like Google Jamboard. There's all kinds of great things. Vocaroo is great. It's free. Free is good. Now, I also strongly recommend games. So Kahoot, but don't use the same games all of the time. They get bored. So that's why I move the games around a little bit. And you can also put the games within Pear Deck. And let's see, there's one more, quizzes. And I know there's more games out there, but the whole idea in closure for small groups, motivate, have interactivity, make your class interesting. And are there other questions? You're asking wonderful questions. ¿Hay algunas preguntas y clarificación? Okay, so I want to introduce, Bamboozle is great too, thank you. And you can type in other programs that you work with.